Hello there Scapers, my name is Xenavilius and welcome to my Edimmu guide. What are Edimmus? Well, they are probably one of the best Slayer monsters in the game in terms of XP per hour, in terms of GP per hour, and in terms of having the rarest and coolest pet, the Eddy pet. But what do you need to kill them? You need 115 dungeoneering to access the resource dungeon in the melee section of Elf City, so you need to be able to access Elf City. You need 115 dungeoneering and you need 90 Slayer to be able to be assigned them. They are one of the few tasks in the game, such as strike worms, which require assignment from a Slayer Master in order to be killed. Now, to get the best XP rates and the best loot, there are a few things that you might want to have, and I'd probably say these are fairly essential if you want to have reasonably good XP rates, and they are the following. So, melee. You want to be able to melee, you want to be able to use the Noxious Scythe, or failing that, the Dragon Rider Lance for its extra range. You want to have the usual high level stuff like Turmoil, Soul Split, Overloads, and perked up gear. For your gear, I would probably say these three are really essential perks you want to have for Slayer specifically. Undead Slayer and Genocidal, you can get both in one gizmo by using either 2 undead components or 1 undead and 1 Bandos component. You also want to have Aftershock 3 on your weapon if you can help it, be it magic, ranged or melee. By the way, melee is the recommended way of killing these, but I'll go into that later. If you can't, then Precise 5 and Equilibrium 3 will be your best combination. And I'd say you want to have the Salve Amulet E for the plus 20% damage and accuracy. On the other side, there are a few things that you may wish to have, especially if you're a lower level. You may wish to bring a Demon Horn necklace with the Ectoplasmata. You may also wish to bring the Scavenging 3 perk because it will gather a lot of really useful components while you're here. The Royale Cannon ability from Artisan's Workshop is also very useful if you don't want to manually restock your cannon, and you will be needing a cannon, a normal cannon by the way, not one of the invention cannons, just a normal one. And you either want to have Penance and the Vampirism Scrimshaw or another aura along with the Book of Death. The Book of Death is extremely useful here. I will go into the reasons shortly. And finally, if you can help it, you want to bring Cinderbane gloves and the Luck of the Dwarves, of course. This is my melee gear, so I've gone with the Book of Death setup, Book of Death and the Vamp Aura. The alternative is to use the Vamp Scrimshaw and Penance or some other aura. Penance is very useful here. You won't really need any prayer if you bring Penance. I brought everything else that I just mentioned, such as my Noxious Scythe with P4E2 and Aftershock 3. I brought Torva, which is my bossing gear, but you can also bring your Slayer gear like I have here. This has my Slayer perks that I mentioned, Cinderbane gloves, Slayer helmet, Salve Amulet E, Luck of the Dwarves, and the Tyrone quiver to actually teleport you there if you have it. My inventory has very little except for one of each of the stackable items that Edimmu drop, so that I don't have to make space for it. It doesn't have all the items, it has most of them. That's mainly because of the space that my cannon takes up. You may wish to deploy your cannon and then take the remaining items and then activate your cannon. Weapon poison, replenishment potion, because you'll be using that a lot. Cannonballs, winter storage scrolls to bank your rune items that you'll be getting, which may or may not be processed by your spring cleaner. And I like to bring dual wield just for using bladed dive for mobility. I'll show you how that works as well. In my familiar, there isn't too much. It's just some generic stuff that you may or may not wish to change depending on which aura you're using, your level of comfort and so on. If you're going to go with mage, there isn't too much you need to change, except obviously if you're not wearing hybrid armor, switch to mage armor. I've got my Slayer perks on my hybrid armor, so I'm not going to switch, but you need to switch your boots, you need to switch your Scrimshaw. I'm going to go back to the Book of Death because there is no healing Scrimshaw for magic or range. You may also wish to switch back to Penance now, or not, or just keep Vampirism just for that healing. And the Rune Pouch, of course, as well as your Noxious Staff with the same perks. Now with Mage, you may wish to use Caraming 3 on your Noxious Staff. I don't have it, but it will give you access to hit 3 more enemies with Chain and Ricochet. So definitely worth a go if you want to have it. And with range, similar thing. Whack on your Ascensions or Noxious or Seren Godbow with its new special now, might be worth using. They've buffed the special attack, which is an AoE attack and uses 30% adrenaline now. You want to obviously have your quiver or bolts or arrows. Range boots and mechanized chin chompers are a great alternative for switching into when the Edimmus are all bunched up together. To get there, you want to go to the melee section, the melee clan section in Northeast Prifddinas. Either you can teleport using the Crystal Teleport Seed or the Tiron Quiver, or just walk there from the middle. And you go through into the Resource Dungeon, which requires 115 Dungeoneering. And yeah, you're right there, set to go. Once you are ready, pot up and all that good stuff, and go just inside and place your cannon where I'm placing it here. You can either place it in this corner or the opposite corner, but I like to place it here because the opposite corner is closer to the entrance. What you want to do is you want to walk up all the way north on the opposite side of the room, tagging as many Edimmus as possible, making sure they're attacking you. Aggression pots might help, but I didn't bring it. And once you've tagged them all, without going all the way to the top, you just go back to the barrier. Your cannon will do the same thing on the other side. You wait behind the barrier until they all stack up next to the barrier, and then you go inside and go ham. You don't want to be outside the barrier for too long because they will lose aggro and stop attacking you and wander off. So don't do what I did here where I was behind the barrier for too long. Once you go inside, all you got to do is use your AoEs. So prioritize your AoEs when you have them all bunched up, as you can see on the list on screen. Now for the first round you probably won't have enough adrenaline to do Berserk, but for every other round after that you will be able to Berserk and use these abilities. That will make it much quicker. Once you've killed off a few of them, you can start using your non-AoE abilities to just finish off the stragglers like I have mentioned on screen, and that's probably the best way to prioritize your abilities. Once you've killed most of them, that's when the cycle finishes and you're ready to go again. There are quite a few little things you can do to make it better. One of them is using a Book of Death. I don't know if you noticed, but that was a 32k hit, guys. That was from the Book of Death. The Book of Death is really effective here because it works on the basis of monsters being on high HP. That's when it procs, otherwise it doesn't proc. Also, you want to make sure that you're not out of the barrier too much. If you are, they will lose aggro and they may also heal up to full HP. You can use a barrier and move left and right to get them all lined up perfectly. And make sure you're in the middle of the pile, if you can help it, when you're using AoEs like Hurricane and Quake, which I didn't do there. If I was in the middle of the pile, I would have reached all of them, but I couldn't reach the last one. Another thing is that you can use Soul Split Flicking. If you're using the Book of Death, you won't be able to use the Vampirism Scrimshaw. I'm not doing a great job of it here, but you can use Soul Split Flicking just when you're using those AoEs in order to heal up as much as possible. Also, the way you deal with stragglers is just as important as the way you deal with the pile, because this is what will determine those extra kills per hour, and you need to do this by using the abilities I've shown here. If you got dual wield, you might as well use Destroy. Also, when you repeat, you may wish to use Bladed Dive to increase your mobility and get back to the entrance faster after you've tagged them all. And remember, you can also use area looting. Most, if not all, the loot will be bunched up near the entrance, so this makes it much easier for you to use it. And you do learn the little things like where to stand if there are fewer Edimmus, which one to attack. So the ones with the higher HP are the ones to use AoE abilities on, because if one dies, then you have to start attacking a different one. I would not recommend using Revolution or Auto Retaliate here, and my ability bar doesn't really mean much. I'm just using abilities in a certain order without looking at the action bar's order. That order I've tried to replicate on screen on the left and right. I've also listed a few shield abilities you may wish to use with a defender while you're behind the barrier waiting for the Edimmus to stack up. Remember, you shouldn't stay outside the barrier for too long. I didn't bother with the defender. I used my enhanced Excalibur because that serves as an offhand. So that's a basic technique with melee. I think I've covered everything there is to be covered. You will learn a lot as you do a bit more using this technique, and depending on your level of comfort, you may wish to use a Book of Death or a Vampirism Scrimshaw, or even if you really don't care about the Salve Amulet, you can use the Demon Horn Necklace with the attuned Ectoplasmator. So using this method, I was getting 350 kills an hour the first time I did it, and near the end of my task, when the Genocidal perk begins to go towards plus 7% damage, I was getting almost 400 kills an hour as I was getting better at this method. So the rewards are there for your taking if you wish to stick with this method. It does involve a lot of effort, but it is extremely rewarding. The alternative method is to use ranged and do some enormous amounts of DPS with the mechanized chin chomper or the decimation bow, tier 87 200 bow. Now the mechanized chin chomper is really good here for two reasons. One, it allows you to use your best thresholds, which are single target, but apply them to a 3x3 area of monsters. So if you get the monsters all bunched up close together, it can do some serious damage for longer periods of time. But there is a restriction. It doesn't work with abilities like Tuskar's Wrath and your original AoE abilities like Bombardment. The method I'm using here involves putting the cannon in the center. This is for people who don't want to run around and exert a lot of effort. This is for people that want to relax a bit more and just camp the barrier, don't really want to go anywhere. It will mean though that you will get massive stacks of Edimmus at the barrier less and less because the cannon isn't as effective as you could be along with the cannon as with the melee setup, but it's still very effective. So the principles remain the same. Attack the middle Edimmu so that it spreads in a 3x3 area. Use the abilities I've listed for AoE damage, and if there are fewer remaining, use the other abilities which will not spread out as much. If you do get a big Edimmu, if you're going for the Edimmu pet, then of course you want to try and kill it as fast as possible. So you want to use abilities like Tuskar's Wrath, even though Tuskar's Wrath isn't applied in AoE. And remember, when you're not exploiting the effects of the mechanized chin chomper or the decimation bow, you want to switch back to your main weapon, which for me is dual ascensions. You will do more DPS with it if you're attacking fewer monsters in a more spread out area, and it's probably better to use it for the large Edimmu. With this method I was getting, you wouldn't believe it, almost 350 kills an hour. I did the maths, I tested it out, and I was getting that many kills an hour purely because of how amazing it is to be able to use essentially AoE abilities all the time with mechanized chin chompers. Decimation may or may not be better, I don't know, but it does require 50% adrenaline for you to use the AoE effect for 10 seconds. So that's completely different to mechanized chin chompers, which you can just keep using to your heart's content. Just a small disclaimer that my figures may be skewed a little bit here and there because of the genocidal perk. I did this range test near the end of my task, so it was plus 7% damage. If you did it at the start, you can knock 7% off these figures, which means without the genocidal perk, at the start of your task you will be getting around 325 kills an hour, and at the end you'll be getting close to 350. But ranged is definitely an option, and again you want to be using soul split flicking when you're using AoEs, because obviously you don't have the Vampirism Scrimshaw for ranged. But soul split flicking is extremely effective because you'll be doing AoE damage for more sustained periods of time with the mechanized chin chomper. Now for the sake of completeness, I'm also going to include a magic section. And magic is very similar to ranged in the sense that, well, firstly I've done a casual test here where I put the cannon in the middle and I'm not really running around the room. The reason I did this was because firstly I was lazy, but secondly also magic and range don't give you the mobility options of melee, so it will be difficult for you to come back to the barrier quickly and also to tag all the monsters. Magic is probably my least favorite, and the reason for that is because you don't have options such as the massive AoE damage for melee and mechanized chin chompers and decimation for ranged. You have to make do with the AoE abilities you already have, which aren't that effective. So it becomes more and more important that you direct your AoE abilities in the right way. For example, the abilities I would recommend you use are on screen as usual, but it becomes more and more crucial that you use these abilities in the right direction to access as many monsters as possible. For example, Tsunami, I kept using it wrong, so it didn't hit all the Edimmus. I need to attack the right Edimmu so that my character faces north, and same with Dragon Breath. So there are little things like that that come into play much more with this method. Your best friend here is Detonate, probably your only good ability that you want to use, ideally while you're in Sunshine, and also Soul Split Flick when you activate it so that you heal as much as possible. You probably want to bring Blood Barrage for the healing if you do decide to use Mage. That concludes the majority of the guide. Feel free to try out the running around the room method with Mage and range if you wish, but I prefer melee much more for that amazing kills per hour. I tried it with a friend of mine as a duo when we both had the Edimmu task, and placing the cannons on the two corners of the room is actually a very effective method of killing these guys. It's actually pretty fun as well, although it's probably not the best for kills per hour. When I calculated it, I got 310 kills per hour with melee with using this method for myself, but combined obviously that's doubled, so you can get 600 plus kills per hour in a duo, combining both KCs. So if you want to get this task over and done with, you may as well co-op and get 600 kills per hour. Get the task done in about 25 minutes before your cannon decays. So yeah, that's another thing I wanted to say. You want to make sure your cannon doesn't decay, although there is a little buff bar icon these days for that. So just to summarize everything, these are the kills per hour ranges I got using my methods. With melee, it's between 350 to 400 using the intensive method. With mage, using the casual method, it's about 280 to 290. So not great, but with range, again, it can be up to 350. So I'd say between 325 and 350 depending on your genocidal perk. Obviously these numbers can be boosted even further by using the tier 99 prayers and the tier 92 weapons. I didn't have either of them, so if you use them, you will get some insanely high numbers. As far as GP per hour, well, I didn't remember to test this out properly, but from a small test I did, where I didn't get any blood necklace shards, I got about 1 mil's worth of drops in 10 minutes. That translates to 6 mil an hour. I may have got a little bit lucky there, so I'm going to say between 5 and 6 mil from normal drops per hour, which isn't unreasonable. I was actually tracking this using rune metrics. So I tracked what was dropped underground rather than what I picked up, which I didn't pick up everything, especially the tortured ashes. Now this doesn't include the blood necklace shards. The chance of a blood necklace shard is 1 in 512, which can be increased slightly with a Luck of the Dwarves. That's worth 9 mil. If you get 350 kills an hour, it'll take you, if you do the maths, that's 6 mil an hour from blood necklace shards alone, given today's prices at 9 mil. So overall you can get like 11 to 12 mil an hour, guys. It is absolutely insane to think that a Slayer creature can give that much money per hour. Obviously it depends on so many things and you won't be able to kill these indefinitely. You can only kill them on a Slayer task. But the point is, it's very much worth killing. Also for the Edimmu pet, which is dropped by the large Edimmus with a 1 in 512 chance of being dropped by them, and the chance of a large Edimmu spawning is 1 in 50, so it's about 1 in 25k chance of you getting the Edimmu pet, all things considered. That's all I have for this video. Hope you enjoyed it and you found it useful, and I will see you in the next one.
I'll take the pain.